Why is it that two condos launched in the same years have the same characteristics can have vastly different outcomes? One prints a $400,000 profit for the owner, while the other barely breaks even after 5 years of holding. Is it luck, or is it something that most people are just missing out? Let's talk about this today. At the end of the day, property is a commodity just like any other asset. Whether it's gold, stocks, or even a bag of rice, the price is governed by one unchangeable law: supply and demand. Think of it like the water bottle theory on value. If you are a normal water bottle at a supermarket today, you may be priced at $1. But if you are on an airplane, you might be priced at $5. And if you are at the desert, then you'll be priceless. In the Singapore property market, supply and demand are not just feelings. Like I feel this condo will be high in demand because it's
brand new and cheap, or surrounding also no condo that's why sure profit.
In fact, these supply and demands are actually measurable data for us to look at whether a condo's value will eventually go up. For an example, if the supply of homes in a 1 km radius of a particular school is capped, but the demand from the parents targeting that school is infinite, the price has to move. If the supply of HDB upgraders in an area is massive, but the supply of affordable private properties in the same area is low, the price has to move. Today, we understand the indicators and dive into the growth quadrant. We will go through the pillars that determine the demand level for the property and in turn dictates whether the property will be a growth catalyst or just a place where your equity sits still. And as usual, if you like content like this, subscribe to this channel. We will be releasing weekly videos on real estate analysis. Most property discussions today center around the past 5 years of growth charts, and it's very easy to say that property prices are doing well in a low interest, high demand period of the market. And in a rising market, every asset looks like a winner, especially given the unnatural circumstances behind property growth in the last 5 years. Namely, the COVID period, which fueled housing demand, construction shortages and delays, and also interest rates being at the lowest in decades. To find the true growth catalyst, we have to stress test the data. And so today we will look at the market through the 2024 to 2025 lenses to see which factors actually hold up under pressure of high interest rates and cooling measures. Because these are the years that the market got tough, new cooling measures were introduced and interest rates were above the norm. Private property growth also slowed down to 3.9% and 3.4% in 2024 and 2025 respectively, compared to its previous years of growth at 10.6%. And doing this would allow us to filter away the illusion that every property will definitely make money and look at the properties that really stood up to the challenge and still churn decent profits during this tougher market. Because in 2026, understanding the why behind the price is the only way to ensure that your exit is a successful one in a sustainable growth market. And today we have 4 pillars that are indicators of a property's demand, and they are: number 1, the anchors; number 2, the market ecosystem; number 3, the micro factors; and number 4, the exit strategy. Starting with pillar number 1, the anchors, or what I would call the structural demand behind a property. This pillar focuses on the anchors that compel buyers to choose a specific location over any others, creating a price premium that holds even in a down market. And starting with school scarcity, or what I would like to call the 1 km monopoly. It's not just about being near a school, it's about the residential density cap. If a top tier school like RI or Hwa Chong is surrounded by landed housing or low density plots, the handful of private properties within that 1 km circle holds a monopoly on that school's entry ticket. And this creates a permanent price floor because demand is always high and supply is always limited. But if you're within 1 km of a top tier school and are competing with 2,000 over units in the same 1 km circle, then that value isn't perceived the same. Examples of these are Kong Hwa or Pei Hwa Primary with multiple surrounding condos. And now, I'm not saying that these developments are bad picks, but if you are buying into any one of these developments and just banking on the school factor and hoping it will explode in value, then it is unlikely to work out. because every other development in the area is saying the same thing, and this dilutes your unique selling point. The weightage of this segment would then be lower and you will need the other factors to bring your property's demand up. Next, we have scarcity in area, or what I call the supply monopoly. When you have a monopoly on supply, you will be the only exit game for local wealth. And this is especially so if you are in a high density residential area. Take a look at developments like Central Residences in Ang Mo Kio Central or Eden at Tampines in Tampines East. These two are the only private properties in a high density residential area, and therefore upgraders would definitely look at them when it comes to upgrading. People who have set their roots down in this area and wish to upgrade into private residential would likely buy into these properties. Why? Because their family, kids' school, and newfound friends or neighbors are all in the same area. They would rather preserve that ecosystem while upgrading. And in the reverse situation, if you are in an area with a ton of supply for upgraders to choose from, then you will unlikely gain the same value as those with limited supply properties and will need other factors or unique selling points to bring that demand up. Easiest way to see this is to count the number of HDB units in that estate versus the number of private properties in the same area. The 80-20 ratio of HDB to private properties will be the one with optimal results, which is similar to the current breakdown of home ownership in Singapore. And of course, one of the most obvious factors, the amenities hub. Proximity to an MRT station or within a few bus stops of one is a baseline expectations of many buyers today. And not just that, projects that offer sheltered, seamless access to supermarkets, a childcare center, a food center or hawker center commands the amenities premium. In 2026, time is the ultimate luxury. They will pay more to save 15 minutes on a grocery run or save 20 minutes of bus rides to the nearest MRT. And on the flip side, there may be some developments that sell purely MRT, and worse yet, a MRT that isn't an interchange or one that people would use commonly. For an example, Antares, which is right beside Mata MRT, downtown line with covered shelter and all, but didn't perform as well comparatively to its other counterparts like Park Esta at Eunos MRT along the east-west line. So being near MRT, yes, but make sure that this is not your only selling factor, and if it is, make sure that the MRT is something that people commonly use. And lastly, the last factor in this pillar, the future transformation, which refers to the master plan. This is where you can see the potential of an area before people catch on. You are not going to be just buying into a private property, you are buying into a Singapore government-backed infrastructure plan. For an example, when a new MRT line is announced, prices can move as quickly as within the same week. Like key residences with Maju MRT, I remember back then the developer even stopped sales immediately and took down all the prices from our apps before releasing a new set of prices days later. But of course, it is impossible to predict where a new MRT is popping up. A more viable approach would be to look at broad plans like the Greater Southern Waterfront Plan or second CBD that will be developed over many years. Price in early upon the release of transformation and watch your prices take off as we creep closer to the completion dates. Because once the plans shift from a drawing board to a construction site, the risk of the project drops and the demand starts to shift. But be realistic about this. For an example, if the Greater Southern Waterfront is coming out in 2040, don't expect your property price to increase based on this effect in 2026. And now we move on to pillar number 2, the market ecosystem, or what we call the support factors. This pillar analyzes your neighborhood's financial health to ensure that there is a ladder for future buyers to climb towards your unit. Starting with the affordability gap, this is the quantum gap between the local HDB prices and your condo entry price. Meaning that if you are a $2 million condo and are surrounded by other $1 million HDB flats, then you will have a lot of strong organic demand to draw upon when exiting. A good example of this would be Commonwealth Towers, which has the support of Dawson $1 million flats just behind. BTO upgraders after selling their flats would have sizable proceeds to then be able to fund their private property upgrade. Imagine selling your $1 million HDB to buy a $2 million condo, this upgraded bridge wouldn't be a bridge too far. But conversely, if you're a $2 million condo and are surrounded by $600,000 HDB, then it's unlikely you can rely on organic demand. When this happens, you will likely have to hope for outside demand to kick in. For an example, like Avenue South residences, even though they have the transformation factor, it may only yield results when the Greater Southern Waterfront is completed. But from now till 2040, they will be struggling because there simply isn't any organic demand to support that price in that neighborhood. If the upgraded bridge is too short or broken, meaning that the price gap between your local HDB and your condo is too wide, you have effectively hit an affordability ceiling. And without local organic demand to support that bridge, your exit liquidity vanishes. And speaking of BTOs, the next factor in this pillar is the BTO MOP wave. Surrounding BTO projects that are hitting MOP soon act as a guaranteed buyer pool to draw upon during your exit. When thousands of HDB units in your immediate vicinity hits their 5-year MOP, you will likely have an immediate influx of buyers who will want to upgrade to private residential but yet stay near their parents or their children's school or preschool. This is because they have already laid their roots in the area, whether since their childhood or in the last 5 years. This will then become the wealth transfer that fuels your capital gains. And this also ties in with the affordability gap because BTO owners are likely to have the ability for the upgrade. Now take Woodley Residences and Park Colonial as an example because their TOP coincided with the MOP of the $1 million flats. They have then since enjoyed a constant stream of upgraders in the past 2 years. If you are staying in either one of these condos, exiting now shouldn't be a problem. For optimal results in this factor, take a look at which BTO estates are going to obtain MOP near to your property and see the prices go up with each transaction due to the increased demand. And of course, we have the general affordability factor. This part is referencing the average Singaporean household income. If the average household income is $11,000 presently, combining that with the estimated BTO gains in your area, you would be able to get a rough idea on whether the affordability gap between the HDB and the private is acceptable or too big in your neighborhood. But of course, this is the median household income and it does not factor in people who are aggressively saving more to beef up their next house funds or even people earning higher than the median amount. And you can't exactly classify income based on districts, like people who stay in Toei are definitely earning more than people who are staying in Yishun. There is no credible way to know how much even your neighbors are truly earning. So the Singapore median income might be a good data point to reference for this case if we are basing on facts and figures. Now we move on to pillar number 3, which is the micro data, or what we call the asset specific data. Even in a great location, an asset can stagnate, and this pillar checks the product itself, starting with the floor plan efficiency factor. This means how much space in the layout is deemed as wasted space. It could be a long corridor or a big balcony that takes up half the living room. High performing properties in 2026 are all about functional square footage, which is why you see harmonized projects doing so well in the new launch markets today. And in cases like this, you are not just selling the size, you are selling utility per dollar. This generally means that your balcony or roof terraces shouldn't be over the top, or bedrooms that can barely fit a queen size bed. And just for your info, the current acceptable and generally more common new private properties room sizes are 8 to 9 square meter, which allows you to put in a queen size bed and side tables on either side, if not then both sides. If your room size is smaller than what we've just said, you can comment down below which development you're staying and share with us how big your room size actually is. But of course, when we say this, does not include layouts that are too efficient. Like take a look at this 700 square feet 3-bedroom units at Uptown at Farrer. This development offers fantastic location next to Farrer Park MRT and City Square Mall. But the downside, you get this or this as the 3-bedroom layout. Yes, I get it, houses are getting smaller and people will eventually get used to it. But I don't think we are talking about these levels of tiny just yet. A simple litmus test on how small is too small is asking yourself whether you should stay here. And if the answer is no, it's likely the same of your future buyers. And if you're afraid of your own preferences and usually prefer things out of the norm, check with your friends whether they would live here or not. And this really depends if you have good enough friends that you can rely on their honesty. affordability. The next factor is unit type scarcity. Here we look at the supply by type in a project. If a development has over 60% one-bedroom units, the resale market will be a bloodbath of competition. However, if there are only a handful of rare 4-bedroom units in a family-centric OCR development, these units will hold their value and see faster appreciation because of the minimal local competition at the point of exit. And now let's use Chuan Park's unit distribution as an example. If you are buying into the 4 or even better yet 5-bedroom, you are just competing with a few of your neighbors. But on the flip side, imagine you are buying a 3-bedroom variant, especially the compact ones, you will be fighting with 50% of your neighbors. And that is crazy. Maybe try to imagine you are one of the 200 listings out there on Property Guru or videos out there trying to sell your unit. Your unit will need to have an outstanding unique selling point like a high floor or unblocked views to survive the exit. If you are in a lower floor unit and are facing one of blocks, I'm very sorry to say, but chances are demand for your unit won't be very high. And not because it's not a good facing, but purely by the unit type scarcity concept in this case. And next factor, we have development design. This could be minor points to some people, but an extremely jarring issue for some. This can also be very subjective at times. For an example, let's take a look at Brownstone in Canberra. The car park is a multi-story car park away from the blocks, rather than the usual basement car park that leads directly to your unit. Comparatively wise, its direct neighbor Visionaire has a direct car park like usual. For people that hate the concept of carrying their groceries from a multi-story car park to their blocks, suddenly Visionaire would be this best choice if they are looking specifically in that area. And to be honest, sometimes unique architecture may deter buyers as well, like the Interlace when it first came out was labelled as coffins being stacked on top of each other. Price growths were initially slow and there were even unsold developer units after obtaining TOP at first. But today we see that same unique architecture being one of the biggest unique selling points of the development. Like how many people can say I'm staying in an award-winning condo, right? 犯贱. And so in summary, there are plenty of reasons to nitpick in a condo at times, but generally anything that is a cookie cutter build these days would likely have no complaints from future buyers. Moving on, we have the newness premium factor. And let's be real about this, humans generally like the latest shiny thing and are willing to pay a premium for it, like the latest iPhone model or the latest graphic card, and the same is for properties. People will pay the premium to be the owner of the latest job in the neighborhood, or perhaps for some people, they see it as a way to get past the renovations anxiety. I can say that a good majority of new launches out there would have made some form of profits in the resale market, because it is after all buying into today's construction prices and selling it in tomorrow's brand new development prices. And humans sometimes prefer instant gratification, which is why they rather buy it when it's TOP'd and they can look at it, see it, feel it, touch it. But again, how much you can earn from these projects is definitely based on the other factors listed in this video as well. So don't go buying a new launch when the other factors are questionable. Just by being a new launch alone wouldn't do you any good in the long run, like some of the examples I'm listing here. And finally, we have pillar number 4, which is the exit strategy. This is the final check to ensure that you are not buying into a liquidity trap. The first factor starting with the price refresh rate. This is the large or mega development logic. High transaction volumes creates a frequent last sold price, which generates a solid valuation support. This helps with your bank valuation and buyers wouldn't have to guess the value of the property. And let's take an extreme example using the biggest private developments in Singapore. First up, we have Treasure at Tampines, 2,203 units, which honestly outperformed all our expectations because it did score well with the other factors mentioned before. And on the other hand, we have Normanton Park with 1,862 units, which didn't perform as well because it didn't score well in other factors. But generally, mega developments do well over time because people perhaps want to stay within a large development with tons of facilities to offer, or maybe it's an insurance policy that the price always stays relevant to the market because of frequent transactions. And without digressing too much in this video, I would have to add a caveat. Mega developments offer insurance in terms of prices. However, because of the huge spike in demand when it first TOPs, expect some form of saturation if you are looking to sell immediately. Take D'Leedon for an example. It struggled a bit during the initial TOP phase because there were many units trying to cash out at once. And eventually it stabilized up and prices continue continue their way up again. Conversely, in a smaller development, say 20 unit boutique development, the lack of data can trap your valuation for years, because if the last known transaction is in 2023, then your valuation in 2026 may still be stuck in the 2023 assigned value. So if you are staying in a mega development, I would say don't worry about it too much. And for those of you considering buying into a mega development, don't go dismissing it entirely either. Even if it takes a while for the condo to offload many listings on the market, by the time it stabilizes, it will be an endless cycle of generating transactions. And next, the local and outsider demand, and this could be summed up in two questions. Number one, is this a project that has local demand around them to cash out from? And number two, is this project in an area that the average Singaporean would want to stay in? Because when you lack the local demand, you are forced to wait for outsider demand from buyers who are outside the region, who have no emotional or logical attachment to the neighborhood. A prime example of this would be Momentum Park, like we showed earlier. In a sustainable growth market, counting on someone to uproot their life from their own neighborhood just to buy your unit is a high-risk strategy. And for neighborhoods with little to no local demand like Orchard, you will have to ask yourself, is this a project that the average Singaporean want to stay in? Take for example 8 at Mount Sophia, which ticks many of these factors, however falls short in exit liquidity, because this isn't a place where the average Singaporean would want to stay. Maybe it's the lack of coffee shops or cheaper groceries, or maybe they just don't want to pay ERP at random corners whenever they drive, or maybe they just simply can't plan their daily lifestyle around the development. So considering these might be important even if you are just an investor enjoying higher than normal rental yields on your property. And so to recap, there are 4 pillars once again. Number 1, the anchors. Number 2, the market ecosystem. Number 3, the macro data. And number 4, the exit strategy. The more your property scores in either of these categories, the higher the demand for your property. This is as close as we can get to the indicators of property demand in the market today. And that's it. The goal here is not to single out any property's weakness, but rather show why some private properties are more profitable than others. While it's fair to say in a blanket statement that majority of properties you buy today will likely profit in the long run, like 20 years later, this is because the population is constantly growing and our land supply is limited. So just based on this simple fact, you know that the property market in Singapore will be a general uptrend. But it will be silly to shortchange yourself on how much you can potentially make in the long run, seeing that this is a huge investment amount that we are talking about. And as usual, if you like content like this, subscribe to this channel. We will be releasing weekly videos on real estate matters or analysis. I'm ASAP, and I will see you in the next video.